Morning. Here we are. Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. I'm Larissa. This is my video diary. Oh my god. Oh. Ooh. Yeah. So, news. France. Oh my god. That's been cooking a while. And Monsieur Macron. Monsieur President. Oh. Feel so bad for your country. I do. I mean, I understand that you identify as being a socialist, and I am very much against socialism, personally. Also, I recognize that you did not cause the problem there in France. It's not, it's impossible. It's impossible. We're about the same age, right? Right, Manuel? We're about the same age. Right? Tail end Gen X. Like, you're like maybe a year older than me. What? A year or two older than me. You're like the same age as Omar. You're like 45, 46. Something like that. Right? The last of the Gen Xers. Right? Oh my gosh. So there's it's this the issue in France. This isn't new, right? And I'm not even talking like new, like the last 45 years. This is part of a back and forth between North Africa. I love it how at the beginning they're like, oh, an Algerian man. I'm like, oh, some Algerian immigrant. No, some person with Algerian heritage, which, you know, that's not unexpected in France, right? It's not unexpected. Battle for Algiers, right? It's not unexpected that there are Algerian immigrants or people with Algerian heritage that are French. Same way that, there are people of all different backgrounds that are Americans. And more information that comes out, right? Like, so the guy said he's a 17-year-old kid. Then they say he's a delivery truck driver. Wow. How does that work? Are there here in the U.S. Are there 17-year-old delivery truck drivers? I can't imagine any company giving a 17-year-old here in the U.S. I don't know about France. I can't imagine any company in the U.S. giving a 17-year-old a job as a delivery driver for the sole reason that you can't get a license until you're 16. And 1 year of having a license isn't that long, right? Have driving be your job. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't even know. So it's a 17-year-old delivery driver, and now there are two other people that were in the truck, and one is being looked for, and one's in custody. And he was shot while he was driving away. And I saw over €1 million have been raised for the cop who's been detained for the shooting. He's being held for manslaughter. Because the kid was fleeing the scene, the stop. I don't know what the hell was in that truck. What was he delivering? He's a delivery driver, saying he had an extensive criminal record already, and that there were two other fellas. Like, it doesn't say that two other delivery people. Did they work for the same company? It says no, two other people. So it's just interesting, isn't it? I don't know. It's interesting. It's really interesting. And like the whole country set on fire. And, some people said, oh, he's Algerian. Other reports said, oh, Muslim boy. It's like, oh. Well, it's like, I think Notre Dame was arson. Mm-hmm. Because the fire started in the rafters in an area that was being worked on, right? Because those old churches like that, are always being worked on for restoration and maintenance and upkeep, right? Particularly in a building like that, a Renaissance era or a no, not Renaissance, they medieval buildings, right? And especially Notre Dame has all those crazy, had to have all kinds of braces to hold it up. It's like a big spider, right? Medieval churches. No, materials were hard to find and everything. And everybody in France is like riding like that. It's like, hmm. I wondered, when Notre Dame burned, the roof and that church was so full of lead, right? So full of lead. The roof was all lead. Had a lead roof. Had a lead roof. Had gargoyle. Right. Lead paint. Where'd all that lead go? Got vaporized. Vaporized. All over France, right? Like French Revolution all over again. They all went crazy from the mold in the rye, right? The rye bread, the mold, some rye mold. It's like bad news. Go crazy. So is this like like mass lead poisoning? Everybody's going crazy now. Oh my! France is kind of like an important part. And so if you totally destabilize France with what's going on in Ukraine, oh my God, Monsieur Macron. That's tough. Wow, that's really tough. No matter what political party you belong to, that's tough. Yeah. So in a country like that, and people riot and burn and stuff, like that's a lot more history that's being destroyed potentially because of architecture and structure and things. Wow. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of birth. Amen. Right? Oh my God. Prayers? That's all you can fucking do. That's all you can do is pray. I think at this point. Really. Oh my God. I mean, no disrespect. Just what do you say to that? Don't even know. Don't even know. Anyway. Yeah, so today Today in the studio, what am I going to do? I'll work on editing, but before I get into editing, I will probably finish that painting finally. Well, we'll see how the paint is. We'll see how tacky it is or how dry it is. Because it's just all, like I said, all I have left is the subject matter, which is just the little piece of the boat that you can see outside of the door. But you can see the top of the head of whatever person is in that boat. And that's the subject of the painting, is the person in that boat, or the fact that there is a person in that boat. So it's kind of like, an important part of the painting. And it's at a focal point. Your eye sees, it's right where your eye is going to be. So it's like the most important part of the painting. And I've saved it for last. Yes. So we'll see. We will see. We'll see how that goes. Yeah. Anyway. 4th of July. Independence from monarchy. Independence from the tyranny of monarchy. When are we going to have the independence from the tyranny of the bullshit that we deal with today? I don't even know. I was telling Omar, my whole adult life, I have been an advocate, a vocal advocate, a strong advocate of voting. And over the past 10 years in particular, what I have seen happen politically in this country and observed, particularly with voting and persons being, running for office and how they're chosen and how all that works. I don't believe in voting now, because I don't believe my vote, number one, counts. I don't believe that the way that things are presented are honest, and I don't trust the system anymore. I don't. I mean, do I believe in the idea of voting? Yeah, I do. I believe in it. I just don't believe that the system as it stands right now, as the way things are in this country politically, I just don't. What's the point? That's how I feel. For the first time in my life ever, I feel like not voting is the only way not to participate. I mean, to not play into the system, be manipulated by the system. Because I think that's what all politics are in this country. Yeah. Thank you for teaching me that, Democratic Party. Thank you for teaching me that, Industrial Areas Foundation. Thank you for teaching me that, Progressive Democrats of America. Thank you for teaching me that, City of Oakland. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for teaching me and showing me just how corrupt. Thank you for teaching me that, City of Sunnyvale. Thank you for teaching me how corrupt you all are. Right? I don't know. Anyway. Oh, looking forward to this pollen, like, not being so high. My face is just full of pollen. Might have a bumblebee fly up my nose or something. Who knows? I'm looking for some pollen. pollen everywhere. Yeah. Made 2 big batches of sandwiches for the freezer for Omar, so he has food. Yeah. So I made him breakfast sandwiches. Cherry ricotta, lemon cherry ricotta breakfast sandwiches, and oh, they're really good, really really good. We split one yesterday. Well, there were a couple the runts. The runts of the litter, so the smallest one. And then I made one. It's an Italian veggie herb. It's got a bunch of herbs, fresh herbs chopped up inside of it, and onion and mushroom and zucchini and sweet bell pepper and tomato, and garlic. Yeah. So he's got sandwiches. Yep. And I'll probably hard boil some eggs for him. That's my Hanuman face. Hanuman! Yeah. So I've listened to my book a couple times now. The new one. It's really good. It's good. And when I first started writing it, I wasn't sure where it was going to go. Right? Like, it's kind of a discovery. And my writing process is a little different than some people's writing process. You know, some people who write, they make these big outlines and everything, and they know how the novel. I had no idea how the novel was going to end. When I start a novel, I have no idea how it's going to end. For me, it's really a case of getting to know the people that I'm writing, the characters, right? It's like getting to know these people. And yeah. So it's interesting to see the themes that come out, and the mechanisms that were effective. And so, like talking about the economy, because the economy is definitely a character, right? It's an unspoken character in the novel, uh, between the, talking about IHSS and what Ruth's bills are, and you know um, the sleeper sofa that she's making payments on, and all of that stuff. Coming back to that, the sleeper sofa she's still making payments on. Um, Talking about the economy, right? She's working full time in an office. She should be able to pay rent in an apartment somewhere, right? And I never come out and talk about her townhouse being subsidized, but there's that possibility that her apartment is in some way a lower rent, because she's making 60 grand a year. I think that's more than I was making at the city of Sunnyvale. I was making 46,000 a year when I worked at the city of Sunnyvale. Yeah, that's what I was making, 46,000 a year. And then when I was working for the museum, I was making 28,000 a year. Yeah, doing all that teaching for the museum, going into all those schools. That was what my salary was. I was salaried at the museum, and I was 28,000 a year plus benefits. Right, and that was before taxes. And oh my god, that's almost poverty wage. That's almost poverty line. Yeah. So she was making under 60,000. What was it? What did that come to? What does that come to? $28 an hour full time. It's under 60,000. And she has that townhouse in San Jose. Right? Like, that's a little unbelievable. But I left it like that on purpose because I want that uncomfortableness there. Like, how much is that rent? How much is her rent that she's paying these other bills, right? Yeah. So the economy is definitely, and there's Brian living with his mother, and his mother is definitely living in a subsidized apartment, right? She's disabled. She's disabled, so that apartment is definitely subsidized that she's living in. And she doesn't work, right? She's just at home. So she has a subsidized apartment. Brian's working, and she's probably getting Social Security or whatever, right? And plus, then she gets to pay him through IHSS, so that money gets recycled in the house. So that's how Brian gets to be a little more. He's got a wallet stuffed with 20s, right? Government 20s. Yeah, so the novel's interesting. The novel's interesting, and I think it is a good. It's like a Polaroid. Shake it like a Polaroid. Yeah, it's like a Polaroid of economy here of California. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and the fact that she's been living hand to mouth for what was it, 2 years since she bought her couch and her car needed a new transmission. Is it a new tea? Oh yeah, the new batch of tea.
See how time to test it.
Oh, I can see how nice and hibiscus pink it is.
Yeah, there's nice colors.
Yeah, it's a real nice color. Should be real lemony with the hibiscus and the rose hips, and then there's I put the rest of the lemon peel from our lemons that I had preserved. Oh, it smells lemony. It tastes rose hippie. It tastes hibiscusy. It's not bad. This is a fresh batch of my can of tea. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's an interesting, and it's also talking very much about the 90s, right? And those of us who were coming of age, you know, out of the 90s. And early 2000s, really 9/11 was a boundary. It was a border almost between countries. And and I'm speaking of that from a generational standpoint. I mean, it really drew a line between Gen X and Gen Y or millennials, whichever you refer to that group as. Yeah, I think what's called Gen Y is a smaller group of people. And by smaller group of people, I mean a time frame, people that are kind of on the border of Gen X and the millennial generation, right? Gen Y. Yeah, it really drew that border there. And a lot of things changed. A lot of things really, really changed at that time. So, is it realistic that there's an escort wagon, a 94 or a 95 escort wagon still on the road? I haven't seen any escorts. I haven't seen an escort in a long time. So, no, it's not probable. Or even a Chrysler LeBaron. I saw some LeBarons in the city. I did. I saw some Chrysler LeBarons in the city. Yeah. So maybe the LeBaron is a little more. It's a little more believable, particularly if she's not driving it that often. But that's why I was real careful about making a point of that. That escort wagon. It's a hooker mobile. It just keeps going. Escort. Right. That's the joke. The play on words there. The old hooker buggy. Yeah. So there's that, and with it between it with the tape deck and the CD player, right? Yeah. So that's all part of it. Yeah. And the fact that Brian's taking care of his mother, that's a very Gen X thing, right? And then the whole thing about with Brian's family coming from Hawaii. That's there's a community of people here in California in particular. I mean, there's people from Hawaii all over the place, but here in California, people came over from the mainland, particularly right after World War II. There's families over here because of that, and it came to the mainland because of that, and there is a back and forth, and then the continued uh, um, exchange of lands between hands. You know, when the last Hawaiian queen passed, and then the end of that monarchy, really. You know, that's still affecting community and culture now. Yeah, yeah. When we were down there, when we went to Hawaii, you could every restaurant had spam on the menu. Every restaurant was spam on the menu. Every single one. I was a little bummed we didn't go to any of the luau's. We didn't do a luau. We didn't do a luau. I was a little kind of bummed, but whatever. It probably wouldn't have been, it would have been a touristy thing anyway. I guess if I go to a luau, I want to go to a real luau. It won't be much for me to eat though, right? Everything's pork based, pork and fish. I could have the smashed taro root, right? Smashed taro root and pineapple. Poo poo make you go poo poo. Yeah. So, all of those things were very conscious, choices that I made in writing the novel. And it was interesting seeing all of those things come together, right? Yeah, and Brian contracting HIV in the late 90s, that was a big thing. Um, there were a number of people in community, at least back in the Midwest, and I can't imagine that it was any different anywhere else in the country. That was a thing, right? There was a Law and Order. Was it a Law and Order episode? An early one. An early one with the character Twist, who was giving HIV to people. In that film Kids, Telly's giving HIV to people all over the place. And I can't remember if does he know that he's positive or not. I don't think he knew. I don't think he realized he was positive. He just, was into having sex without a condom, right? That's what that documentary was, because yeah, that's what that film, that mockumentary. It's not a mockumentary. That film was. That's what that film was about. It was about that spread of HIV and how that was happening. But yeah, that was a thing. People purposely spreading it, resentful that they had it, right? Yeah. Yeah, there was an older guy in high school, college. I have gay friend Brian. As far as I know, he's not HIV positive. He wasn't then, you know. Hope you're healthy and well, Brian, wherever you're at. And no, the Brian, other than sharing the same name, the Brian in my book is not based on you at all. um, but I remember him telling me that there was a guy, an older guy, that a bunch of the younger guys that had been out for a couple years, already. They were trying to figure out how they were going to get this guy to stop because he was infecting people on purpose. And he would go after, so they were like spreading the word at the bars and stuff to the young guys who were first, coming onto the scene to stay away from this guy, because that's what his deal was, is that they called him a HIV haver. HIV haver and giver, right? It's just terrible. It's just terrible. So I wanted to look at, down the line here. Here we are, 20 years later, 20, 30 years later, whatever, 20 years later. People who went through that, where are they now in their lives? What's going, yeah. What's too much? What's too much? And then with Patty at the end there, all of it was very, conscious choices in the moment, right? But I didn't sit down and write out an outline of this, and this, or I want to show this, and this. It was like, okay, here's this person in this situation. Let's look at her life. Let's look at his life. Let's see what's going on here. Right. Anyway, on with the day. If you haven't, I have the book on audio here. Go into my playlists, and you'll find there's a number of books that I've written that are that I've read, and there's a few books that I haven't written, that other people's books that I've read. Right? I know I haven't finished Breakfast of Champions, and I should finish reading Breakfast of Champions. Omar actually sat down and read that book cover to cover. He did. He read it. I was like, oh, look at you reading a book. Yeah. So yeah, you go in there and find when it becomes too much, playlist when it becomes too much, and you just press play all, and you can listen to the whole book. Had a dream last night, speaking of which. And then I need to get going because I got shit to do. But I had this dream last night. So one of the books that I wrote is called Consenting Adults, and it's a collection of short stories that are vignettes, right? They're portraits of men based on all the men I have, known in my life. And I don't mean all of the men I have known biblically. I just mean all the men I have encountered, worked with, known, been friends with, dated, whatever. Like, just men, right? They're vignettes of men, portraits of men. And I wrote that longhand. It's the only storybook. Now, my poem, when I write poetry, I always write poetry longhand. I don't type poetry. I always write poetry longhand. But when I write stories, I usually type. So rather than writing longhand, so Consenting Adults is the only fiction I have written longhand in a long, long time. I don't count the stuff in grammar school. So I wrote them in black composition books, right? I wrote that book in black composition books. And I had this dream last night that I was at some sort of sports stadium, and it might not have been a sports stadium. It might have been in a university somewhere, because the seats had a little desk on the right side. And I had one of these composition books, and I was writing in these composition books. I was writing letters in these composition books to people. And I fell asleep. Like that time I was at Wincroft Academy, and it wasn't really sleep. It was like, and I didn't lose consciousness. I just kind of fell forward and was kind of like paralyzed. But I could hear, right? And so I was in the middle of writing, and I fell forward, and somebody came up next to me. And when I came to, there was in crayon written all over the letter that I was writing, I love you, 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 I love you. It was written in like smudgy crayon, right? And then I'm having a conversation, like I'm sitting there, and Steve Kerr, coach of the Warriors, comes up, and he sits in front of me, and it turns around. He's like looking over the chair. He's got his arm over the top of the back of the chair in this space, right? And I said to him, are you scared? He's like, we're terrified. I said, you should be. Oh, it was a really weird dream. It's a really weird dream. That's what I dreamed last night. And I was writing in one of those composition books. Anyway. Oh, the Ravens. The Ravens have been so loud lately. It's that time of year.